Today's video, we're going to be checking out McFarlane Toys Movie Maniacs Series 2. This is Psycho's Norman Bates. Before we get closer looks at Norman, let's figure out how tall he is. The figure stands at about 7 inches. Like with other Movie Maniac figures, he comes with a display stand featuring the classic movie poster inside. A slight faux pas though, the poster inside is actually of Psycho 2, not Psycho 1, even indicating the fact that Norman Bates is coming home. I guess they wanted to use this particular poster. I don't know if they had the rights to use the Alfred Hitchcock original poster, but ultimately they ended up going with using Psycho 2, which is perfectly fine. I think it's a nice looking poster. It's got a little bit more color and stuff to it. Speaking of additional color, the base itself also has some additional color used here too. Now I'm going to just move Norman just to the side. We're going to move some of his accessories to the side. Here is the Series 2 display stands, and just for comparisons, there's Series 1 display stand. This would have obviously been from Texas Chainsaw Massacre Leatherface. You can see that it's using the exact same display stand. The stands carried over for a little bit before they started transitioning them out into the more smaller stands that we would get later today, in the later waves. Other than that, I mean, the stands are exactly the same other than the Series 2. Norman Bates' stand is a much darker looking color. It looks like they've incorporated some additional kind of yellows and browns and stuff like that to it. That may not also be completely across the board, as we've seen with hopefully some of these reviews that I'm doing. Paint application can vary drastically, that if you had picked up, for example, 2 Norman Bates, I don't know why you would, but the stands as well as the paint on the figures could vary from one figure to the other, even though it's the same released figure. So there is his display stand. A good way to, of course, showcase the figure on a shelf or wherever you end up displaying these. It's nice to have the display base backdrop here featuring the poster. Move that out of the way and move Norman over. His other accessories, while transforming him to Mother, he comes with the wig, and he also comes with a knife. That's his only accessories. One could say, I mean, you could leave the wig off in its entirety, but then ultimately what you're stuck with is Norman in Norma's dress here. The face is crude, as something I've indicated before, but it does, I think, look like Anthony Perkins. On 100%? Maybe no, but I think it does give enough of an impression of what, he does look like, that I think it's passable. And certainly from the standards of when the figure was first released, a lot of people actually thought the figure was really good. And I still think nowadays the figure is actually really good, though just a little bit on the more basic, simple side. He has his wrinkles there and a very worried look on his face. Or some could say that is the face of Norma, as if he's wearing, after all, the wig. The dress, well, the dress is just a series of spots. If it was a floral dress, for example, it would definitely not read that as we're looking at the figure here. It just looks like a dark blue dress with some lighter blue or lighter violet spots all over it. They've sculpted in the wrinkles, which is a nice touch, of course, as the dress flows down to his Norman pants underneath and his shoes. The dress looks good. Ultimately, though, it boils down to the fact that the figure is slightly, or should I say not slightly, considerably pre-posed. He's got roughly about the same sort of pose as the Ghostface figure, also from Movie Maniacs, where you have one arm kind of extended out, holding onto a knife, and then the other hand is kind of just grabbing, or in the case of Ghostface, you could put the phone also into his hand as well. But it's got roughly almost a carbon copy pose from Norman here to Ghostface. So it's a very similar looking pose on both figures. Let's talk a little bit about the knife. The knife isn't bad. Unfortunately, the way that it pegs into the hand, it simply just slides into the hand. but it does make for the knife looking a little grossly proportioned, in which the handle just doesn't look like it should be that far up, but it makes perfect sense once you start sliding it into his hand. This I could only describe as nerve-wracking, as you have to twist the handle into the hand until it eventually clears to the other side. If anything was to break on this particular figure, let's hope that not be the case, it would likely be the handle of the knife, or it could be potentially the blade too. The blade has a little bit of give, not something that you would entertain wanting to bend all that much, but if you would imagine this guy falling, oh no, falling off of a shelf, that knife probably would break. The knife in hand looks good, and then the icing on the cake is of course adding the wig. The wig sits loose. I almost would think that that's a better thing than having it sit considerably tight. For starters, it does look like a little bit more like the wig because it's a little bigger on his head, but also because it's not completely fitted to this head either. It also means that when you take the wig off, you're not running the risk of rubbing paint off, which is the last thing I would want to do if I'm adding the wig and taking the wig off and putting the wig on. But there's Norman, or now Norma, with wig and dress. 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to be displaying this guy. I don't want to make that assumption. I'm sorry for making that assumption, but I would think many people probably would display this guy with the wig, as it's more the iconic scene of the shower curtain being pulled away and Norma standing in silhouette. I won't do that for the rest of the review, don't worry. Figure as a whole is really good. Let's go ahead and run through his posability now. Again, wiggle that out, being very careful not to damage the handle. Oh, that's the last thing I would need. Take that out. There we go. There we go. Okay, so let's look at this guy's posability. His head rotates left and right. His arms rotate all the way around. Awkwardly, yes, because he is pre-posed. So like the arm here rotates, although it's really stiff on this particular figure. And then for some reason, he's got a hinge here, but he doesn't have a hinge here. He only has the hinge up at the shoulder. He rotates at the hand, the hinge on the hand, so you can have it look as if he's, I guess, trying to think of how he would pull away the curtain. I guess he would pull it away like that. This also rotates up the top, rotates the waist. Don't really know why you would want to rotate the waist. I mean, it gets to the point where it does look somewhat sectional, like he's been sliced in half. And then he's got a rotation in the feet. Had not for the fact that his feet are swivels, this figure is a little bit more difficult to stand, especially with the knife. But if you straighten the feet forward, he seems to stand perfectly fine. Unlike some of the other McFarlane Toys Movie Maniac figures such as the Jasons, the Freddys, those figures have seen other releases in some regards and some arguments made, better releases later on by the folks, say, at NECA. NECA nor has any other company really approached the Psycho property, and therefore Norman here of the Movie Maniacs is one of the few figures that have just never gotten another figure release. So of course for that, the figure's demand is a little bit higher than perhaps some of the other figures on the market. Still, if you are looking to pick this guy up now, you shouldn't spend a whole heck of a lot on this guy. He is maybe not as rare, for example, as the Michael Myers. In some instances, just for the fact that just because the property hasn't been handled again, he is still one of the more inexpensive Movie Maniac figures to pick up on the market. So if you guys want to grab this guy and add this guy to your collection, going on eBay, for example, you probably could find this guy for about $10 to $15. He's a good-looking figure. He does still feel a little on the dated side, but there's some personality, I think, that could be said for Norman. I like the fact that they incorporate a wig that can be removed, as they simply could have just sculpted the figure with the wig already on his head. The knife, well, the knife could be the same problem that your Ghostface may have had. I know my Ghostface knife was broken ultimately when trying to get it into his hand. Luckily, it didn't happen here with Norman. All around, it's a good figure. It does feel a little on the older side, being the nature of when these figures were first released. But I think there's some personality that can be said for Norman Bates, even when he's dressed like Mother. Today we were having a look at the Movie Maniacs Series 2. This was Psycho's Norman Bates. If you guys like videos like this, certainly hit it with a like. Always like getting new likes. New subscribers are also welcome to this channel. If you don't know how to subscribe to a channel on YouTube, let me walk you through it. There's a little subscribe button just below this video. There's also a little review spot logo like right at the bottom corner of this video. You can click on that, and you can also hit subscribe that way as well. Speaking regarding the videos here, the Movie Maniac figure reviews, if you want to check out more of these, I got a playlist on the channel designated solely to Movie Maniacs. So just look up that playlist and you should be able to watch all the stuff that I've reviewed categorized within the McFarlane Toys Movie Maniacs line. Certainly more of these kind of videos are coming your way, guys. I was like kind of going back and looking at some of the vintage collectibles. I don't know, I feel wrong even saying vintage. What would define vintage? That would be a good question to pose you guys. What would you consider vintage? This figure is not incredibly old. It's not from the 50s, the 60s, the 70s. Would you consider this figure vintage? That's an interesting question. Nonetheless, though, more of these kind of videos will be coming your way. So if you guys like the Movie Maniac stuff, don't worry. We got more of those reviews coming your way. Certainly other videos will be coming your way as well. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.